So we have all seen the bodies on the streets of Bucha. We have heard the testimony of those who've been raped and those who've been tortured. We have seen the bombed out hospitals. We've seen the destruction of civilian infrastructure. And our guests in this next panel are of the strong belief and have the commitment to see Vladimir Putin and his forces held accountable for the things they've done in Ukraine. Let me quickly introduce them, if I may. Joining us virtually is Oleksandra Matviichuk. She is head of the Center for Civil Liberties and a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And here with us in the Opera House is Daria Zarivna, chief advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. Thank you both for being with me. Oleksandra, I want to start with you. First, congratulations on the Peace Prize, a testimony to the incredible work that you've been doing in Ukraine. I'd like to get a status report from you, if I could. I have read various numbers about the numbers of atrocities that have been documented in Ukraine. What's the current tally that you have?
I have been documenting war crimes for 9 years since this war started. But after 24th of February, we faced with unprecedented numbers of war crimes. We united our efforts with dozens of regional organizations, and only for 1 year of large-scale invasion, we jointly documented 39,000 episodes of war crimes. And 39,000, it's a huge amount, but still a tip of iceberg. And what I want to emphasize on that Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia attempts to break people's resistance and occupy Ukraine by the tool which I call the immense pain on civilian population. So we document not just violations of Geneva or Hague conventions. We document human pain when Russian troops deliberately shelling residential buildings, schools, churches, hospitals, attack evacuation corridors, manage filtration camps system, organize forcible deportations, commit murders, tortures, rape, abductions, and other kind of offenses against civilians.
Dasha, you've been looking specifically at the children that have been abducted and removed from Ukraine. What do those numbers look like, as best you know?
According to official documents, there are now approximately 20,000 children that has been illegally deported to Russia, but surely these numbers will increase, and there are so much more. But for now, we have filed 20,000 children. And we were managed and we were able to return only 364 children back.
How does the process work? How do they take these children from their families?
There are 5 basic scenarios of Russian kidnapping playbook. First of all, they kill their parents. The second one, they separate parents and children during filtration. The third one, they take children from the orphanages. The fourth one, they create the conditions of living which are unbearable, and then they suggest to take children for so-called summer camps and recreation. So this is basically the main scenarios, and sometimes they also simply take children from the place where they live or where they study.
And what happens to these children? They take them to Russia, and what happens there? Do you know?
They take them to Russia. They take them to distant regions. They change their citizenship, their names. They don't give any information about the whereabouts of these children. They also, there's an interesting report appeared in February by Yale School of Public Health, which uncovered the whole system of re-education and relocation of Ukrainian children. And what is most interesting, during these re-education activities, children been taken to military trainings. They are not allowed to speak Ukrainian. They are not allowed to define them as Ukrainians. And they've been brainwashed and used in Russian propaganda, in Russian media.
And you say they're giving military training to some of these children?
Yes, it's mostly...
How old are the children they're giving this training to? And is there any indication they've been deployed?
It's starting from 15, 16 years. It's more like propaganda military trainings.
So they haven't been deployed to the front lines as far as you know, nothing like that. Alexandra, you have asked for international help in documenting these atrocities. I read recently that the US and the UK have made some commitments to do so by the end of the month. Is that significant? Is that anywhere near enough?
We face with a huge accountability gap, which have several dimensions. First, there is no international court which can prosecute Putin and high senior political leadership and top military command of Russian state for the crime of aggression. Even International Criminal Court have no jurisdiction over the crime of aggression in situation Russian war against Ukraine. And that is why it's so extremely important establish a special tribunal on aggression and hold Putin, Lukashenko, and other Russian war criminals accountable. And the problem is that we still look to the world through the prism of Nuremberg trials, where Nazi war criminals were tried, but only after the Nazi regime had collapsed. But we live in a new century. We cannot wait. Justice must be independent of the magnitude of Putin's regime's power. That is why we have to establish such special tribunal now and hold Russian war criminals accountable.
And where are we in the process of establishing a special tribunal?
We need political courage and historical responsibility of leadership of different countries. And we are very grateful for those of them who express their public support to this idea. Because once again, we are fighting for justice, not only for Ukrainians, we are fighting for justice to prevent also a next atrocities from the new nations, which can be a possible next Russian target. Because all this hell, which we now face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity, which Russia enjoyed for decades in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Syria, in Libya, in other countries of the world. Russia have never been punished. Russia believe they can do whatever they want.
We have some questions from the audience. Oleksandra, let me direct this first one to you. How important was it for the people of Ukraine when the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for President Putin in March? And do you believe we will ever see Putin in The Hague?
It's extremely important gesture because this is an ambition to live in a world where you can rely upon on the rule of law. Because what Putin tries to convince with this war and the whole atrocities, he tried to convince the whole world that democracy, rule of law, and human rights are fake values because they couldn't protect you during the war. He also tries to convince the whole world that country with a strong military potential and nuclear power can dictate their rules of the game to entire international community and even forcibly changed internationally recognized borders. And with this decision, International Criminal Court sent a strong signal that we don't care that you are current head of the state, which are UN Security Council member. We don't care that you have nuclear weapon and strong military potential. If you committed war crimes, you will be accountable.
Do you think you will ever see him in The Hague?
I have no doubt, because it's lasting for too long, and it's our joint responsibility to break the circle of impunity.
Dasha, let me ask this second one of you. How has the relationship between the common people of Ukraine and Russia changed in the past year, and how many generations do you think it will take for normalization to occur here? And I ask this specifically in light of the abductions of children.
You know, I want to complement what Sasha said. In 1946, Winston Churchill put it back one very good quote. He said that there is nothing that Russia respects more than a strength, and there is nothing that it disrespects more than weakness. So when we are talking about what needs to be done, I guess that being brave and having strength in our actions is extremely important. And Russia, I guess that Russia's core product for export for decades was fear. And this fear they used to manipulate the whole world and Ukraine as well. But now I think that the time has come not to fear anymore, to break this vicious circle and to be ready for strong gestures and actions. Getting back to your question, you know, the strategy which Russia had for Ukraine, it's not something that has appeared recently starting from 24th of February 2022. For example, when I'm talking about the kids, in 2014, they launched a special project which was called the Train of Hope. This train came from Russia to illegally annexed Crimea, and it brought people who were willing to adopt Ukrainian children in Crimea. So this is the part of ongoing strategy, which has a long, long history. The same history as treating Ukraine as a so-called younger brother and not treating us as a nation. So this is why I guess that Russia should come through a very, very long period of realizing and understanding all the mistakes of the past. And until it will happen, there is no sense to talk about anything else.
Oleksandra, we have seen technology used by some parties to try and document some of the atrocities that have taken place in Ukraine. And some of them used by private entities like Bellingcat, for example. What role do civil society and human rights organizations play in advocating for accountability by Russia?
Today, we have digital instruments which provide us an opportunities on which we even can't dream 30 years ago. Like people with ordinary smartphones can make photos and video which will be essential for a future investigation. We can use digital technologies and open data to restore what's happened and to identify perpetrators. And the work of Bellingcat and other kind of organizations convincingly prove that in order to document war crime, sometimes you even not have to be on the spot. But what is not so developed as a digital technology, it's international criminal justice. And that is why the role of civil society is crucial. I work directly with people who survived the hell, and I know that they need to restore not just their broken lives and broken vision of the future. They need to restore their broken belief that rule of law is essential and justice is possible, even though delayed in time. And I think that we have to change the global approach to war crime justice. We must ensure justice for all victims of this war, regardless who they are, their social position, the type of crime they endured, and whether or not media or international organizations are interested in their case. We must return people their names, because the life of each person matters.
Dasha, you also have been looking at ecological crimes. When I first heard that, I thought about the Zarivna power plant, for instance, and the possibility of catastrophe there. Is that what we're talking about, or are there other kinds of ecological crimes being committed right now in Ukraine?
There is much more, and the scale of these atrocities is very high. So I would even talk about the ecocide in this case. Of course, Zaporizhia nuclear station is a case. Now they turned it into a military base with ammunition, and we have an information that they are planning to take out personnel from there. And this is very dangerous because each mistake can become fatal. Of course, I cannot not mention the Chernobyl restricted zone where they dug tranches. And there is so much more, such as our forests, like 23 hectares were completely burned out. I also can speak about water pollution in our rivers, in Dnipro, in the Black Sea, in Azov Sea. And at COP 2027, Ukraine raised a question and came up with an initiative of launching the special platform which could assess all the damage which has been caused to Ukrainian environmental. So we included environmental part into the peaceful formula, Ukrainian peaceful formula, which was presented by President Zelensky. And we are also planning to launch a special working group, international working group, to address this issue.
Oleksandra, and actually you also, Dasha, I'd like to get a response from both of you. On specifically, what would you like this audience to do? What do you want for the international community to do when they leave this room? Oleksandra, why don't you go first?
I ask to support our struggle for justice, because justice is a precondition for sustainable peace in our region, where Russia for decades uses the war as a tool how to achieve their geopolitical interests, and for decades uses war crimes as the methods how to win this war.
Dasha? Dasha, do you have marching orders for them?
I do. First of all, it's really important to support Ukrainian willingness to become the member of NATO. The Vilnius summit shouldn't repeat the mistakes which have been done in Bucharest. And if Ukraine would become the member of NATO, I think that this is one of the fastest way to finish the war. And one more thing, I've told about the children case and about the ecological case. Right now, like in a few weeks, we at the Office of the President of Ukraine will launch 2 special international working groups, and we are looking for lawyers, for human rights defenders, for ambassadors of both of these streams. So if anyone in the hall would like to support us and to become the members of this group, we are more than open and welcome.
Great. Dasha Zarivna and Oleksandra Matviichuk, thank you both so much for the work that you're doing. It couldn't be more important. And thank you also for sharing your insights and wisdom today. Thanks so much.